I'll just go straight to the translation and purport, since we don't have a whole lot of time. But this is a beautiful verse in glorification of Lord Shiva. And just to give the context, so we have a pastime, there's a celestial event that has been unfolding, and the inhabitants of the universe, they have been threatened because there is a poison that is spreading throughout all of existence. And so the demigods, they take shelter of Lord Shiva, whom they ask to remove this poison that is spreading. And Lord Shiva, he then proceeds to swallow the whole thing. And in this context, it is said that great personalities almost always accept voluntary suffering because of the suffering of people in general. This is considered the highest method of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is present in everyone's heart. And Srila Prabhupada goes on to say in his purport to this verse, here is an explanation of how those engaged in activities for the welfare of others are very quickly recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:68-69, Yaidam paramam guyam matbhakteshvapidashyati nachatasman manusyasu kaschinme priyagritamaha. One who preaches the message of Bhagavad Gita to my devotees is most dear to me. No one can excel him in satisfying me in worship. There are different kinds of welfare activities in this material world, but the supreme welfare activities is the spreading of Krishna consciousness. Other welfare activities cannot be effective, for the laws of nature and the results of karma cannot be checked. It is by destiny, or the laws of karma, that one must suffer or enjoy. For instance, if one is given a court order, he must accept it, whether it brings suffering or profit. Similarly, everyone is under obligations to karma and its reactions. No one can change this. Therefore, the Shastra says, Tasyaiva heto prayateta ko vido na labhyate yat brahmatam uparyadaha. One should endeavor for that which is never obtained by wandering up and down the universe as a result of the reactions of karma. What is that? One should endeavor to become Krishna conscious. If one tries to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, he should be understood to be performing the best welfare activity. The Lord is automatically very pleased with him. If the Lord is pleased with him, what is left for him to achieve? If one has been recognized by the Lord, even if he does not ask the Lord for anything, the Lord, who is within Area 1, supplies him whatever he wants. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Tisham nityapi yuktanam yogakshemam vaham yaham. Again, as stated here, tapyanta lokatapena sarvapraya shojanaha. The best welfare activity is raising people to the platform of Krishna consciousness, since the conditioned souls are suffering only for want of Krishna consciousness. The Lord himself also comes to mitigate the suffering of humanity. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanya bhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadadmanam shrijam jaham. Paridharanaya sarunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samstapanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself, to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium. All the Shastras conclude, therefore, that spreading the Krishna consciousness movement is the best welfare activity in the world, because of the ultimate benefit this bestows upon people in general. The Lord very quickly recognizes such service performed by a devotee. Srila Prabhupada ki. So you can say here in the Hare Krishna movement, we are quite biased when it comes to welfare activity, because there's a lot of that going on, right? So, you know, there's the Red Cross, and they are collecting for starving children somewhere, many places. There's UNICEF, there is like cancer awareness foundations and this and that. There are so many welfare activities that are trying in one way or another to make the world a better place. And that's great. Hats off to them. We are very much encouraging such initiatives. But ultimately, the Vedas, they explain that if you want to perform welfare activities, then you need to be acting on the spiritual platform. We need to perform welfare activity to the soul, because we can serve food to all the starving children in the world, but the hard truth is that they will all grow old and become sick and eventually die. Same thing with, like, we can administer so many forms of medication and open hospitals, but the mortal ratio will remain 100%. We live in a world where we will all meet our end, at least in this physical material body. So therefore, the Vedas are explaining that welfare activities should cater to the needs of the soul, and since the soul is eternal, that welfare should result in an eternal goal. Before we go any further, I would like to ask, so how many in the room, show of hands, believe that Krishna is God? So when Krishna is speaking the Bhagavad Gita, you all listen to authority. It's not like, okay, that's Krishna's opinion, but I have my opinion. So Krishna, he has his opinion, and that is the opinion. That's how it works, right? So most of us, except for newcomers, of course, you're absolutely like in a position to doubt. Doubt is a function of the intelligence. It would be kind of, a little bit naive if you just walk into the room and just go, okay, sure, Krishna is God, why not? Let's just go with it. So doubt is a function of the intelligence, and it's very good, but it should be rightly placed. You should have your doubt, and then you should ask questions, and if you see you get coherent, intelligent answers consistently that takes away your doubt, then you have somewhere where you can place your faith. So that would be very good if that happens. So, okay, we have faith that Krishna is God. And Krishna, he talks in the Bhagavad Gita about a goal which is transcendental. Right now there is a vote going on in Denmark, and the politicians, they are promising cleaner air or more parking spots in Copenhagen or whatever. So many promises are being made by these politicians. Krishna, he makes a promise which is of a totally different nature. He promises that if you worship me with love, you can come to me. You can come to God. And it makes sense that that would be awesome, right? Because if God, he has made this entire cosmic manifestation with everything that we can see and experience and touch and taste and fathom, if he has created that, the best of the best, crème de la crème of this world is the creation of God. And he says of his own creation, he says, this isn't very good. He says, dukalayam ashashvatam. He says, I did this with my left hand. Because this world is temporary, meaning that everything that we enjoy has an expiry date. So whatever it is, whether it's like the good meal that will be served out in a few minutes, right? There's a limit to how much you can eat. Unless you are Chakratirtha Prabhu, then there is no limit to how much you can eat. So, but apparently, most things in this world, it has a beginning and an end. And because we invest our faith into the events of the world, thinking that this will result in me becoming happy, we become frustrated. There's a beautiful verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 7th canto, which goes, Tatarabidam patinam cha sukaya anya panutaye, kamani kurvatam daristva nivritusmi vipayaya. It is said that in this material existence, man and women unite because they want to achieve happiness. But the sage who speaks this verse, he says, by practical experience, I have observed that it's not happening. Neither man nor women become happy. He says, therefore, sannyas. I have given up all material activities. So that's the conclusion of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that if you base your happiness on a material situation in this world, you will be frustrated. Therefore, we need an alternative. And now Krishna, he presents this alternative as the spiritual world, a place where every step is a dance and every word is a song. Now, show of hands, who would like to go back home, back to Godhead, and experience that firsthand? That would be amazing, right? You have a very high hand. Yes. So you really want to go back home, back to Godhead. That's nice. So then we can ask, what's the best way? How do we ensure ourselves going back home, back to Godhead? Well, the Srimad Bhagavatam, in this verse, it gives us a clue. It says, Paramaratanam taddi. This is the highest means of worship. What is the highest means of worship? Tapyante loka tapena. When we voluntarily accept suffering for the suffering of others. That makes the heart of God melt with love. And he says, to such a soul, it is guaranteed. It is guaranteed that I will take you back home to my own abode. Srila Prabhupada, he writes in his purport, if you have satisfied God, what is left to be achieved? If you were to run for mayor in Vandløse, it would take a lot of hard work, right? You'd have to campaign and you'd have to know people and advertise yourself and whatnot. Years of hard work, and you might even fail. And if you fail, what have you achieved? Nothing, right? But if you manage to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what have you not achieved? Because if you are in a position that God feels indebted to you, that's a sweet place to be. And Srila Prabhupada, he says in his purport, you don't even have to ask for anything. Because God, being Paramatma, the Supreme Soul situated in your heart, he knows what you want and he is going to give it to you. Given that it's a good thing that you actually want, because God, he doesn't award us things which are not good for us if he wants us to advance spiritually. So yes, the best way of attracting the mercy, the favor of God, is when we accept suffering for the suffering of others. This is called tapasya in Sanskrit. You have heard about tapasya? There are many different kinds of tapasya, right? For example, you wake up early in the morning and you take a cold shower. That is tapasya. Yeah? You decide to, wear these weird wooden sandals that they use in India. Have you seen? They're called padukas. They hurt like hell. I had a period where I was wearing them. I gave up after a few months. Tapasya, right? It hurts like hell. You voluntarily accept suffering. But if I wake up early in the morning and I take a cold shower, or, I wear these padukas, or maybe, you can be fasting, skip food on an auspicious day like Ekadashi or Janmashtami, right? It's tapasya. You definitely, if I tell you, okay, accept tapasya, skip the Sunday feasts. No, because you have already made up your mind, right? So that is very hard tapasya. Yeah? But what good is this tapasya for the benefit of the world? Do I help poor children in Africa by wearing padukas? Or do you feel uplifted by my cold shower in the morning? No, there's no connection. Right? So it's self-centered tapasya. We can accept some voluntary suffering, and in a sense it's good because it elevates us to the mode of goodness. It helps us rise above a more animalistic state of consciousness. But it's not the best. We have to do tapyante lokatapena, for the suffering of others. Now, in order to really embrace that, we have to firmly understand that people in the world are suffering. Even those who appear to not be suffering still are suffering. It can be a little bit difficult to grasp, right? Because, for example, Denmark, it's a welfare country, nice pay, like clean tap water, stuff like that. It's nice, right? Okay, now it's getting a little cold, but we have central heating and stuff like that. So, no, but people, they are suffering. Why? Because dukkhalayam ashashvatam. That Krishna, he has made this world in such a way that it's temporary and therefore it's miserable. Once upon a time, then Srila Prabhupada, he was driving in a car. He was driving through America. And they were passing by a golf court. I love this example. Srila Prabhupada, he asks his disciples, because he sees all these elderly people who are playing golf. And he asks them, what are they doing? And one disciple, he proceeds to explain to Srila Prabhupada the rules of golf. What then happens is amazing. Srila Prabhupada, he starts crying. Really? Such a boring sport? They use the stick? Where's the action? Where's the fun? No. Srila Prabhupada, he started crying. Tears of compassion. Because he thought to himself, is this really how they spend their final days? He saw these old people who are like about to die. They are, who knows, maybe 5, 10, 15 years, maybe shorter, maybe longer, but everyone in this world is in one sense about to die. And so Srila Prabhupada, he started crying out of compassion because he understood that they are wasting their time. Precious time that could be spent with cultivating Krishna consciousness. So we can understand that people are suffering. Even those who don't seem to be suffering, we should not be blinded by the materialistic glitter, their seeming ideal circumstance that might, from a material perspective, might be enviable. Oh, I would like to have what this person has. But would we really, if we would trade for that our God consciousness? I remember the existential crisis and the pain of having doubts about what happens when I die. Is there a meaning to our existence? Is there a God? And if so, who and how? And like, what do I do? So in so many ways, our sufferings, they have been mitigated by God consciousness. We know that we are eternal souls, whether we know that theoretically or we are actually realized that we have genuine understanding of what it means to be a spirit soul. Even the theoretical understanding can mitigate our material miseries. We can understand that there is God, and that it is not some envious, some cruel God. No, that God is loving, God is kind, God is educational, He's cheering on us. He wants us to come back home, back to Godhead. So if we understand that people in the world, they are suffering, then naturally what should happen is compassion. And when Srila Prabhupada, for example, from that realized platform of God consciousness, when he sees people in the world, he can genuinely understand that they are suffering, and it comes very spontaneous. And that feeling, that emotion of compassion, it doesn't just stay as an emotion, right? It transforms into practical action. Srila Prabhupada, he would very often say that love is service. You can say you love someone, but you prove that you love someone by the way that you render them service. So we can feel sorry for someone, we can feel compassionate for someone, but what do we actively do in order to actually relieve their compassion? Compassion literally means, it comes from Latin, and it means to be suffering with others. And that's very beautiful. It's very beautiful to see the suffering of others and to take that suffering as your own. And when you see others being happy, to take that happiness as your own. Happiness in that sense becomes very infectious. In our Vaishnava culture, we call that paradukha dukhi. That one feels the suffering of others as one's own. And so naturally, when we come to the temple and we chant Hare Krishna and we listen to the Bhagavad Gita, we very naturally will develop that compassion, because you see the contrast. You go out into the world and you see that people, they are struggling in so many ways and that they don't have God consciousness. But if our compassion really needs to have a practical outlet, right? Because if you are suffering with the world, but you feel that there's nothing that you can really do about it, is it then a very good thing to be compassionate? Just if it ends with compassion, is that a good emotion to be caught up in? If you end up feeling like you feel hopeless and you kind of end up in some like existential depression, right? Like they call it in modern philosophy, they call it nihilism. That everything is just bad and there's no point to anything, and become a very depressed state of existence. Now, the beautiful thing about Krishna consciousness is that it's a whole package philosophy, because we can understand that people in the world, that they are suffering both materially, like physically, there are so many difficulties that everyone is going through. Everyone who has a material body is suffering physically in one way or another. And then on top of that, there is so much mental suffering. There is so much anxiety. There is so much depression. There is so much stress in the world. But we can actually do something about it. And just as Lord Shiva, he was able to drink up the poison that was endangering the entire universe. In the same way, Krishna, he can drink up the poison of materialistic philosophy, of atheism, of impersonalism, thinking that God is just some vague energy, or that there is no God, or like Krishna, he can swallow all of these. He can make them go. And how does he make them go? Through his expanded energies. Krishna, he expands himself in so many ways. And in Kali Yuga, specific ways that Krishna, he decides to expand and to distribute his mercy is by the sound vibration of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, if you feel a little bit of existential depression, that, oh, the world is such a bad place and it's so hard for everyone, and you would like to do something about it, you are very welcome to join us for Harinam in Copenhagen every Saturday from 2 to 4 o'clock. Come out into the streets and sing and dance, and in that way, you are helping Krishna drink the poison. Other ways that we can distribute Krishna's mercy, distribute his kindness, is by the distribution of wisdom. For example, The fact that there is Sunday feast here, that there is a place in Copenhagen where people, they can come and they can lend their ear, and in that way they can receive the words of Krishna through the Bhagavad Gita. That is also actively fighting the materialism of the modern age. So if you are, for example, you are putting your energy into the temple, you are supporting that, then that is an outlet for the compassion that would otherwise cause existential depression. Another way, which for me this is a personal favorite, that is to take a stack of books, put them in a bag, go out into the street, and then talk to people. This is an amazing activity where you meet people and you just strike up a conversation, and then you just talk to them about the scripture. You talk to them about the soul. You talk to them about God. You talk to them about reincarnation. And in that way, then you actively fight the ignorance that is so prevalent in the modern day. Now, we are in a situation that we have a beautiful, beautiful community. And this is very nice. Because if we see ourselves as individuals, and we take it upon ourselves to be compassionate, then that is quite intimidating, right? For example, to go out in the street and sing Hare Krishna or distribute books or in other ways put yourself on the front line alone. That is very intimidating. But it is beautiful that when we are together as a community, then it is not so fearful. It is not so overwhelming. I remember some of the first times that I was out with the devotees from the temple here, chanting Hare Krishna on the street. Anyone has had that like first time experience of going out to sing and dance and feeling that whoa, this is a little bit like I'm out of my comfort zone. I'm definitely outside of my comfort zone. Because people, they are looking and they think we're weird. And my ego is being like, I'm feeling it. So this can be quite intimidating. But if you are together with many devotees, and enthusiastic devotees, who are not scared of being different, who are happily singing, who are happily dancing, who are giving away prasadam and distributing books, and then you feel like you are invincible, right? Because you are a part of a movement. Srila Prabhupada, he would say the Hare Krishna movement. Movement is supposed to be moving. It is not supposed to be standing still. Same thing with our compassion. It is supposed to move. So we come in here, we come to the temple, we listen, we recharge, we strengthen, we fill up our spiritual batteries. And once those batteries, they are full, then what do we do with them? How do you plan this week? How do you plan to distribute Krishna consciousness? What is the endeavor that you will do as an individual to move the needle a little bit in the right direction? How many is coming for harinam next Saturday? Show of hands. How many already have very important plans on Saturday? Very few. So what about the rest of you? Yeah, you have nothing better to do. So come and sing Hare Krishna. There is no pressure, only a little bit. So, but it is very nice, and it is something that brings a lot of pleasure to the heart of Srila Prabhupada, and we can take encouragement from this verse, knowing that when we willingly embrace that pain, when we take suffering for the sake of the suffering of others, that is something that pleases Krishna very much. And actually, I would like to, before we end here for today, I would like to let you in on a little secret. Because when you voluntarily embrace suffering, something magical happens. That is that the suffering that you would otherwise have to experience anyway. Krishna, he was ready, right? He's ready to put it on you, but then you took it before he could. So you have your karma. You have your good karma and you have your bad karma. And there's a lot of it, right? Because we're eternal spirit souls. We've been here for a long time. We have a lot of bad karma, like piled up. And it's just waiting for us. So, but if we willingly embrace and accept that suffering, then we will avoid it coming to us in all kinds of mysterious ways. Does that make sense? There's a beautiful verse in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where it's described that the gopis, like the friends of Shrimati Radharani, they were experiencing such separation from Krishna because they love him very much, right? So that when you are separated from your beloved, naturally that results in a lot of pain. And because their love for Krishna is so intense, their suffering in the absence of Krishna was so intense. But then when they remembered the good times with Krishna, then they became extremely happy, like overwhelmingly blissful. So they were going through these shifts of temperature, hot and cold, extreme. And it's explained there in the scripture that those gopis, when they were suffering the separation of Krishna, that burned away all of their bad karma. And when they experienced intense happiness in remembrance of Krishna, that burned away all of their good karma. In that way, they achieved complete freedom from the bonds of karma and enabled themselves to return to their eternal swarup, to their form in the spiritual world. So, in the same way, if we dive wholeheartedly into devotional service, we will naturally experience some pain, some difficulties, and that is not to be avoided, because that is burning away our bad karma. And at the same time, we will experience some happiness. We will meet many good friends in devotional service. We will have many beautiful experiences. And Krishna from within, he might overwhelm us so much that even a tear of joy falls on our cheek. And that will burn away our good karma. So that eventually it will be finished